Well, good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Good, thank you. May I, on behalf of the candidates, welcome you to the St Lawrence Parish Hall for this constituency hustings meeting. Our combined electoral constituency consists, of course, of the parishes of Trinity, St John and St Lawrence. My name is Martin Saby, and I've been asked by the candidates to chair the meeting with Pat, my wife, as my assistant, especially timekeeper. The rules and regulations for this meeting have been set entirely by the candidates themselves. The ground rules, as to the important matter of timing, have been set by the candidates as follows. First of all, their introductory speech is a maximum of 3 minutes. The answer by each candidate to a question from the floor, maximum is 1 minute, and there will be a time warning with 15 seconds to go. Pat, my assistant, will be ringing the bell with 15 seconds to go, and then again at the end of the 3-minute or 1 minute period, as may be required. And the meeting is due to finish by 9 o'clock at the latest. We have our 8 candidates. Hopefully you can all see the names on the placards. And one point about questions. I know we're not starting with questions, but the questions should be questions that each of the candidates would be capable of answering. Shouldn't be sort of personal questions to deal with matters just relating to that candidate. So that sets the scene, and I would now ask the first candidate, which I think is Gregory, to give his introductory speech.
Good evening. Up to me to break the ice. I thought about it, and I think that the first thing I should do is to thank you. Because thanks to you, or at least most of you, I got to serve the island at a pretty high level for the last 4 years. And I'm extremely proud of it. It was an extraordinary 4 years, and I'm very, very glad I had that in my life. And of course, I owe it to your vote. Of course, it was not all a gift. It was a lot of hard work. I was involved in 2 ministries and about 20 panels, boards, and committees. So I had a pretty stiff agenda for the last few years. Which was a lot of hard work, but which I was very, very happy to do. And I hope that through all these, I was able to nudge the system a little bit towards making Islanders' life a little bit easier. At one point, I had to defend Jersey against the country of my birth, and I hope I didn't disappoint you. This government was a little bit special. We didn't look at the projects that would earn us kudos or votes. We looked at everything that needed to be done. And there was a very, very long list of things that had been passed as just too difficult or too long to do. Fort Regent needed to be redone. State's pension needed to be sorted. The government offices needed to be done. So we started all these projects, dozens of projects, which need several terms complete. And of course, we did all this while navigating the 2 worst crises of the island since World War II. Basically, Brexit, which you tend to forget a little bit now, but which is still and will still affect us for a long time, and COVID, which is exactly the same. Lost us 2 years and pretty much changed the state of the island. And while we did this, of course, we had all these special projects to deal with, an immense workload. It was the year of an island plan, and that normally would take all the effort of a government. And this was, for us, maybe 3, 4, 5% of our workload. We had the climate emergency to deal with and try to sort out. Building government offices, OneGov, when we arrived, basically, they told us, well, for the next 6 months, don't ask us anything. We're just trying to reorganize the whole thing. That was not terribly easy. You will probably hear a lot about our hospital. and the largest housing building campaign the island has ever seen. So tonight, I'm asking you to please give me the opportunity to finish all these thankless but absolutely essential projects. And I hope you know I will not fail you.
Thank you, Gregory. And our next speaker is Andy Howell.
Hello, everyone, and especially the parishioners of St Lawrence. Thank you so much for letting us come and use your hall this evening, and thank you to Martin Saby for being our chair. My name is Andy Howell, and I'm standing as an independent candidate for the deputy for the new District 3. And I would really appreciate your vote on the 22nd of June. I feel very fortunate to have lived in Jersey for the last 40 years. I know this doesn't mean that I qualify as a Jersey bean, but nevertheless I regard Jersey as my home. We've brought up our family here, and I really care about Jersey and all aspects of island life, people, environment, traditions. I'm standing for election because I think we need a fresh start. We need new states members, and I would love to be one of them. I want to be part of an estates assembly that listens to islanders and is open, transparent and accountable. I will work collaboratively and with integrity to make sensible and financially sound decisions, ensuring that we do not waste taxpayers' money and that we live within our means. I want to address the cost of housing. As a retired dentist and a wife of a GP, I am passionate about making a positive change within our healthcare system, reducing bureaucracy. Our future hospital needs to be properly future-proofed and provide all the services and facilities that we islanders need. Current plans need to be revisited. Sadly, morale is low at the moment, and I want this to change. Our wonderful frontline staff need to be cherished and empowered to do their jobs. Excellent patient care, coupled with kindness and compassion, has to be the number one priority. I believe everyone matters. I hope I'm approachable, hardworking, and I will value your input. Together, we can put islanders at the heart of decision-making. But the only way I can make a difference is if I get elected on June the 22nd. So if you live in St John or Trinity or St Lawrence, please vote for me, Andy Howell. I would love to be your deputy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy. Next is Hilary Jern.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. My name is Hilary Jern, and I would love the opportunity to work for you to make Jersey a fairer, more inclusive and sustainable place to live. If elected, I will use my passion, experience and influence to make a real difference. Making a difference is what drives me, and it's why I'm standing as an independent candidate. I grew up in St John's and became interested in politics through my family, who taught me about the importance of giving back to our community, of making an impact and difference for good, with strong work ethics and how to participate in a good debate that is respectful of everyone's opinions and, most important, listening. This inspired me to follow the path I have been on for the last 20 years, working with and influencing international organisations and their member governments, including the United Nations, the World Bank and the European Union. I've worked for Oxfam and for the Fair Trade Network, and now through my own business, encouraging countries to reduce inequality, protect the environment and create a sustainable future. I've monitored, scrutinised and influenced the European Union's budget, how the World Bank spends its funds, as well as trade, climate change, agriculture and international development policies. Given my time locally, I'm Deputy Chair of Jersey's Young Adults Homeless charity, JAF, and an advisor to the Jersey Community Foundation, elected member of St John's Community Committee Rural, working with the current deputy and constable on influencing the island bridging plan, and editor of St John's Parish magazine. Using this experience and knowledge while working collaboratively and building consensus, I believe I can make an impact. Policies must be values-led, evidence-based, and focused on our future for our younger generation. As a mum of two, I know firsthand how vital it is that we devise and implement an education framework that focuses on problem-solving, critical thinking, building confidence and empathy, and reducing excessive testing. Protecting our environment is high on my agenda. We can do so much more, and we must do more to protect our island and play a role in achieving global goals. This includes accessing affordable, healthy food from farmers that are valued. We must address and improve the situation of housing in both the private and rental markets to stem the cost of living crisis, with rapid implementation of the homeless strategy as well. I want to see a strong, diverse economy that works for all, which supports small businesses, innovation, and pushes us to be a sustainable finance jurisdiction. I will prioritise delivering access to primary healthcare, an integrated dementia strategy, and a new hospital. And I will work for diverse and inclusive society that addresses the gender pay gap, supports parents' return to work, and further adoption of the living wage. I promise to listen to you and to be your voice. I am accessible, approachable, constructive, and I will collaborate with all states members to develop impactful policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hilary. And John, your turn.
Good evening, everyone. So for those who don't know me, I'm John Lafondre, and it was actually 16 and a half years ago that I first stood in this parish hall. It's been a privilege to serve as deputy, senator, and as chief minister. The last few years have been unprecedented with Brexit, COVID, and now the impact of Ukraine. And it's taken calm, tough decision-making, resilience, experience, and total commitment to lead the government through this time. While some people, sadly, suffered loss and others still face difficulties, Jersey has emerged in a strong position. We have protected lives and livelihoods. We supported businesses with a whole range of packages, and we kept the schools open longer than most other places. Our vaccination programme, border testing and contact tracing were superb, and the innovative £100 spend local scheme I initiated was very popular and a global first. And despite the challenges, our finances are sound, with high reserves and a £59 million surplus for 2021. I've used my breadth of political and professional experience to unblock and launch complex projects for the long-term benefit of islanders. And to give just two examples, the Office Estate project will complete in 2024, saving around £10 million a year and releasing brownfield sites for housing. And recently, I concluded 2.5 years of work that will ultimately save us around £3 billion. Other situations require swift solutions, and on day one, as Chief Minister, I was informed of a lawsuit of £200 million, with more to come. What could have been done had not been done. We put law changes in place, and in the first 6 months, we saved £40 million. And alongside the long hours worked in the pandemic, we invested considerably to start to improve health, education, sport, culture, and mental health. Much has been funded by making savings, now at around £70 million a year. Work has started on Fort Regent. The new tech fund is important for the digital economy, and plans in progress will deliver thousands of homes over the next few years. There is hope, but it requires continued focus and persistence. And to cope with the cost of living crisis, initial payments were made last month to help the vulnerable. This is in addition to new support for people who do struggle, including with GP fees and dentistry costs. And to reassure you, even during the elections, work carries on so that the next government can act quickly in these times. To finally get planning permission for our new hospital is significant. It is a large sum of money, but it's funded responsibly, is affordable, and it's ready to go, and it does need to happen. We live in an increasingly complex and rapidly changing world. My team has taken long-term decisions to secure a positive future for Jersey. Whilst recovering from COVID, we still face global issues. It will take experienced politicians as well as new faces to hit the ground running. I hope you recognise the value of my experience and consider me for one of your 4 votes, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, John. Elaine? You can, but your microphone won't pick you up. You'll have to speak more loudly.
My name's Elaine Miller.
Turn it on. Is the green button at the bottom?
Start again.
Okay, hang on a minute then.
Sorry. Good evening. My name's Elaine Miller, and I'm standing as an independent candidate. I've been really enjoying getting to know people in St Lawrence, getting to know the parish, and coming to talk about your concerns. It's lovely to see so many of you here tonight, and thank you for coming. I'm an advocate, and I've been a lawyer for 35 years. I have a track record of success in my career. I've been a director in one of our biggest banks, a partner in one of our biggest law firms. And for the last 7 years, I was the Viscount and the first woman to hold that role. I was appointed to those jobs because I'm good at what I do and I work hard. I'm good at making sense of complex information. I'm good at finding solutions to problems, and I'm good at making sensible decisions. And that's what I'm offering you now, someone who's capable, who can get things done, and who will work hard to deliver positive outcomes for the 3 parishes of the district and for the island as a whole. I believe I can make a real and immediate difference to the State's Assembly. My manifesto focused on 3 main areas. First, business. Although we need to protect financial services, the majority of businesses in Jersey have fewer than 5 employees. Small business is the lifeblood of any community, and we must support our small businesses by reducing red tape as much as we can. In St Lawrence, of course, that support should extend to venues like the War Tunnels and Hampton, which are important cultural sites, but which also play a part in our visitor economy. Second, health and social care. Our health professionals need the resources and facilities to deliver good quality health care. The new care model will only work if it has funding and people, and it needs more input from health professionals themselves. We must now focus on building a hospital that meets the island's needs. Third, housing. Clearly, there is work to be done. We need to find sensible solutions to expanding our housing stock. We need a fair deal for landlords and tenants, and we need to find help to buy schemes that work for Jersey. But importantly, we need to understand our current and future demand for housing, and we can only do that if we've clearly considered housing policy on population. Like many of you, I also want to see effective controls and more transparency on government spending. As Viscount, I was responsible for public funds. I took that responsibility very seriously, and I monitored costs carefully. I was always under budget. But I found that government systems do not result in value for money, and that must change. There must be clear responsibility for public spending, and individuals must be held to account for managing budgets. I do hope that you will give me one of your votes, because I will not let you down. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Kirsten, over to you.
Thank you. Similarly, my grandfather always told me to stand for speech. Good evening, and thank you all so much for coming. I've had the enormous privilege of serving St Lawrence for the past 4 years, and it's been a true honour to do so. During that time, I've been an active member of the parish, attending parish assemblies and events, and I've been involved in our parish twinning and Battle Flowers associations. I've tried to be accessible to you all. I've served parishioners in many ways, helping with individual issues such as financial matters, through to community concerns such as planning matters. I've also been there to help people negotiate the myriad bureaucracies that are sadly coming to be a mark of our government. For me, this accessibility is important, because it is my strongly held belief that Jersey should be proud of its democracy, and that it will continue to be so only if islanders feel that government is close to the people. I try to represent that belief in my work as a States member, but I appreciate that the general feeling, and the one that I share, is that Jersey's government is becoming more distant from us. This is a trend that I truly want to reverse. As an independent member of the state, I have, and should I be re-elected, will continue to speak on behalf of you all. I believe in open, transparent and accountable government. And as both the chair of the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel and an assistant minister with responsibility for farming, the marine economy and culture, arts and heritage, I have continually questioned government with the intention that islanders are able to understand the decisions that are made, why they are taken. No one person or party has all the answers. The States of Jersey is intended to work in a collegiate manner, with the collective minds of members working for the island's best interests. It is because of this belief that I am choosing to stand as an independent candidate. If re-elected, I want to help Jersey on two fronts, dealing with the challenges of today, whilst at the same time building a sustainable and prosperous future for us all. This means providing housing that is affordable and a housing market that is focused on providing homes for islanders and not assets for speculators. I'd like to continue the work I've done in the arts and farming. That work is helping those sectors develop to provide satisfying and meaningful careers for our children and grandchildren. Only if they have meaningful careers will they want to stay in this island. Lifelong careers need to be supported by lifelong learning that enables us to train and retrain so we are empowered and in control of our own destinies. At the same time, I want to see our long-term care scheme revised to be less bureaucratic and to ensure that people are not losing their homes and struggling to pay for care. We need to push forward with the work that will enable us to move away from an economy centred on population growth to one that is technologically enabled and able to provide islanders without increasing the number of people here. I aim to bring common sense, hard work and a willingness to question established thought, all with the aim of working for you to deliver a sustainable island and a prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. And Hugh, you are next, please.
Good evening, all. I thought I was going to be coming to a hall that I didn't know so many people here, but it's a delight to see so many faces that I know. And it's great that I have dealt with them in certain aspects of the life of Jersey. I'm probably looking down and listening to the conversations, probably the odd one out. I've been here probably the least in time in Jersey, but there is one connection that we have with St Lawrence. The reason that I have the connection and the reason that we moved to Jersey, my mother-in-law was a teacher here at St Lawrence when she came over in 1976. So we do have a connection, and she was telling me today the number of deputy heads and heads that she knew from those days. So I have a little connection, but I think what has been said before, and I think what I really want to get across is that I think with my background, and I think that's one of the reasons, and dare I say it, why I was chosen to end up with 4 different ministries, that is not possible. And I think that what Kirsten said is absolutely right. I think you can only do one job that's good, or you have the ability to one job that you have a lot of experience in. And I think that that comes across very well in what I've been doing. You can't be a Minister of Health and a Minister of Infrastructure, a Minister of Education, Sport and Culture, and then the one ministry which has not been written anywhere, which is the one that I was very confused about and I took on, but I wish now I hadn't, and one has to look at the failures. And that was the one government situation that was set up, let's say, by a certain individual that was on the island years ago. I've never quite got to the bottom of that, and I've never quite got to the bottom as to how that ministry ran. But it has caused me a problem in the sense that you have to look at the work that you do and then look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you doing it professionally enough to do it? And I think sometimes that you get away with it. And what has caused my problem is that, and if there's Trinity people here, I think that one of the things that I will say is that you tend to back off the parishes. But having been the Honorary Police President for some 6 years, again, an Englishman, but having been an Honorary Police President for 6 years, I got to know the parishes, got to know the constables, and got to know many of my colleagues that are still in the Honorary Police. We must keep it. We must keep the parishes. We must keep the constables, and we must go back to looking at the way the system works with regards to the voting. I'm not happy with what and how we've ended up with this. I am delighted to be here because I see smiling faces, and I hope that you will consider all of us when you go voting next time, because I think you have something to be proud of, and what I've heard from so many people this evening, I think they're very much happy with you and want to be enjoyed by the St Lawrence member of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. And last and eighth to go is Mary Venturini. Mary, over to you.
Thank you. I am always last of the list. My name is Venturini, as you can see, but my maiden name was Wilsey. That was even further down the line. So in some senses, I'm lucky because I've listened to everybody, and now I can finish off, I hope. Thank you very much for coming to listen to us. There are a lot of you here this evening, and that's excellent. I wish that I were here, or I am here as well, to listen to you, because I think this is extremely important, and we will have our question time afterwards. One of my sincere beliefs is that those who govern must listen to those they are governing. This to me is vital, and I'm afraid that I have found in the last few years that the divide between those who govern and those who are governed is getting wider and wider. I found this particularly over the COVID Christmas, that Christmas when we were all locked in. And I was given several government reports to read on the selection of the site for our new hospital. And there I sat on my own reading these reports, pages and pages of them, and thinking, I don't really understand where we're going. There were some extraordinary things in these reports, and I thought, I've got to get out and find out what all this really means. So on January the 7th, I started walking. I started from the bowling club, I walked up Westmount, I walked all around Overdale, I walked down Old St John's Road, and I walked back again. And I invited anybody who wanted to come with me. And I decided that I would do it for 30 days, not one day, but for 30 days, because it's only when you repeat things and you go on asking questions, you go on seeing people, that things begin to fall into shape. And indeed, they did fall into shape, and I had lots of questions as a result. I have been asking those questions ever since, and I have not always had the answer. Only today, we were trying to work out how many new beds there are going to be in this hospital. After 18 months, we still don't know. And this is why I'm here. It is to find out what is happening, to gather information, to put it together, to come to some conclusion, and then give it back to all of you in something that is understandable and not involving all sorts of numbers, some of them massive numbers, that we really don't understand. However, this isn't the only thing that I'm here for. It is also because of housing and because of the environment. Housing is, I think, perhaps the most dramatic thing we're facing, and the environment we have got to face together in due course and very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Well, the time has now come for your questions. As you know, each person will get a minute to answer on this side of the table. And I think I saw a hand raised over there. Sorry, Jason, could I just ask you for your parish as well? It's all right. Thank you.
I'm very much interested in access to affordable housing. Given that we have a rise in Hugh, which 80% of the new apartments are sold to investors, should we not be prioritising any new builds to buy or to ready to live in? Why is it selling as units of investment for your chosen resident elsewhere?
Okay, well, I think, Gregory, you're going to be taking this one first.
Yes, I hope you use the microphone next time. I only heard about half of that, but I caught, I think, the two important words, which is units of investment. If you want to rent a property, and a large part of the market needs to be tenants, somebody needs to own it. So the problem, the false problem, is whether houses are bought and then left empty. But that doesn't exist. That's really completely ridiculous. So we don't want speculation, and we've actually blocked that. That is gone. But what is left is the possibility of buy to own or buy to let. And buy to let is just as important as buy to own because many people want to rent rather than own.
Okay, and Andy?
Hello. I agree that we should not be letting our housing stock go to overseas investors, and I think Jersey people should be given the opportunity in the first instance to buy these, did you say flats?
Yeah, it's basically, selling these apartments as investments to people who are rich now, that rent to buy, and first time buyers about new builds.
I do think that we have to find some way of helping our young people onto the housing market, and people who've been living here all their lives should be given priority. Thank you.
Hilary, do you have a view on this one?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. I think that it's really important that we look at having a spread between rental and also home ownership, because we do need to have some rental, because we have people who come to Jersey as key workers or here for a short amount of time, and they do need to rent and not buy. But at the moment, the rental market is not currently functioning as affordable alternative to home ownership. So that does need to be absolutely looked at. The Citizens Advice Bureau says that some people are spending up to 60% of their income on rent. And this is really having a squeeze on the cost of living. So I think that really needs to be looked at. But also for home ownership, there needs to be support to help young local families to provide, to get given on the ladder of home ownership. But also there's also step-down housing to be able to help those in older generations who would like to maybe move out of their homes into smaller accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Okay, Jason, I hopefully understood the question properly. In terms of accessibility, you talked about external investment. So external buy-to-let, as I call it, we stopped within SOJDC from 2019 as a policy. In terms of new share transfer, we stopped that in January, I think it was, of this year. And those are all mechanisms by which external investors can come into the market. So it's not killing the market, but it's trying to take some of the heat out of it. Russell Labby has issued what he's calling a kite mark. That's about who can buy, and that's about prioritisation. But some of these do need a law to back up. We lost 2 years because of COVID. That's something that's on the list for next time round. There are schemes in place to assist in terms of accessibility to housing that are done through both Andy and JDC. There's also £10 million aside for a new scheme to come through, which again was under development. And the key issue for me is to get the sites available to build on, and that is why the importance of the office strategy. If the hospital keeps going through, that will free up other brownfield sites as well. There are lots of components coming together, and that's why I say there is hope. But I agree in terms of the external buy-to-let side.
Thank you, John. Elaine.
I think it's very difficult to stop people from buying property if they want to buy it and let it. There has been a move towards investing in property for a long time because bank interest rates have been so low, and I think there's always a demand for rental property. I think we do need to look at rental property and look at controlling rents. I spoke to a lady in St John yesterday, or Monday, who was paying £3,000 for a very small house, £3,000 a month, which is £36,000 a year for a very small house. Now, a mortgage would be much cheaper, so we need to find ways of getting people from rental into their own homes if that's what they want to do. I agree with you, if we need to look to increase the proportion of new developments that are available for people who are buying to live, then we should be doing that as well. What I would say, though, is that I have spoken to someone who's a lawyer in one of the biggest property practices in the island, and she says that there is actually very little evidence of foreign investors. The notion that we have foreign investors buying up land in Jersey and letting it at huge premium rents is simply not there. So most landlords are local people.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Thank you, and I can pick up on that and agree. It's one of the things I thought. As people talked about external off-island landlords, there isn't much evidence of that actually taking place in Jersey. Most landlords in Jersey are Jersey people. And the reality is that rental has been the strongest performing sector of our economy over the last 20 years. So that in itself shows that we don't have a healthy economy, because whether it's finance, digital, telecoms, anything, nothing has performed as well as the rental sector. But in answer to Jason's question, we do need to intervene to make sure that there is access to young people, normally it's young people, first-time buyers, into the housing market. That does mean shared equity. That does mean where government is building, whether it's through SOJDC, through Angium or any other housing trust, that the pathways are available to young people to be able to get on the ladder and buy those properties. It is something that we need to revisit. In about 2008, the construction sector pushed back about having to themselves build a certain proportion of new homes for first-time buyers. I think we need to intervene and tell them, if you want to be building large projects in this island, you need to be building them with a certain proportion for first-time buyers. That, in my view, should be between 10 and 20% every single time to make the rest affordable. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you. You drive straight into my hands a bit, because I was in charge of a medium building society in the UK for some 20 years. If you go back to 1946-47, believe it or not, the word that comes up after the men and children, women came back from the war, was that they wanted to buy affordable homes. Here we are, 2022, still talking about affordable homes. One of the things I've had with government is, would somebody mind telling me what affordable homes are? Because I cannot get to the bottom of it. But I think that Kirsten has the very much point of view that shared equity, from my perspective, was one of the ways through. The other thing is that you must get the lenders on side to be able to lend the money to the people. What happened was, after the war, they built prefabs, dare I say, that had 20-year uses. Those prefabs, some of them are still going. And the biggest problem with that was that no building society, investment bank, anybody would lend on it. 1960, when they went through the business of buying council houses, that was the closest time we ever got to affordable homes. So from my perspective, it's shared equity, but we have to have the banks and the funding places on side to be able to do it. And I think that that is a big question that we have to ask all our investors. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Mary?
Having the banks on side is one of the things that's going to be a real problem coming up. Interest rates are going up and up and up, and it is going to make this very difficult housing market even more difficult. I think there are two sides to it. One is obviously the Jersey, the demand from Jersey people, but there's also a very large workforce in this island that comes in for all sorts of reasons that we also have to cater to in the lower end of the market, in the rental end of the market. I would like you all, if you possibly can, to go and see an exhibition called Home, which has been put on by the Art House. It's very interesting to look at one of the exhibits and to see what awful conditions some of the people who come to live here live in. I think there should be very strict quality controls on the rental markets. They should be brought up to standard. I know that some people say, well, that's going to price the market. But you cannot have people living in housing which is not adequate, where there is water running down the walls, there is mold on the walls, and the drains don't work.
Thank you, Mary. Well, that was some interesting answers, wasn't it, to the first question? Who would like to go second? I can see several There was a lady at the back there.
There's a gentleman with a...
Oh, sorry, gentleman with the microphone. I'm sorry. Thank you.
My name is Richard Day. Excuse me, I am Sir John, so I'm not a traitor because it's now a district.
Is your microphone switched on, sir?
Sorry.
Is your microphone switched on? I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Sorry, I'll
Thank
put
you.
it closer. Can I come back on very quickly on housing? Because probably Deputy Gregory could answer me this. In France, you can buy a cheap house. You can buy it very cheap. Why? Because the French government put a 30-year tax on it. If you have, I think it goes up relatively, but people won't invest in France. If you want to buy a house, you can buy a very cheap house, but you have to live in it. You have to live in it now. You can't go and make a profit on it unless you're going to keep it. Now, why can't we do that? Why can't we bite the bullet and stop every Tom, Dick and Harry coming into this island and using this island as a stock exchange? Because that's what they're doing at the moment, and that's why our children aren't able to buy houses. It's as simple as that. They're doing it in Cornwall, and they're doing various parts in England. Why can't we? I don't know why. Perhaps some of the members on the panel can tell me. But my question is actually, I hope I put everybody's nose out of joint. In the light of poor results and over-dictatorial management of our ministerial system of government, and the terrifying degree of ever-increasing social poverty in this island, I personally urgently request that the whole ever-increasing dictatorial cost of running such an undemocratic dictatorial system be totally scrapped, and a far more open, transparent and honest form of government. A government that listens, speaks and serves its people under the dictionary translation of a true democratic process. I apologise. I personally would like to see an open, honest and transparent single house assembly where everyone I vote for would be able to support the people's choice on an equal and honest basis, not marginalised and playing maybe second fiddle if they are lucky to get into the ministry. Will you vote for? Will you, for my vote, and I'm asking you, rid of us of the present debilitating system of ministerial government within your first year of office, or duly and honourably resign?
Sorry, sir. Could we just clarify your question? You've spoken for quite a long time, but
right, sorry.
Your actual question is?
Well, if making it clear that I personally disagree with ministerial government, and I think it's failing the island, right. And I think it should be changed, and changed as soon as possible. And for a system that is more open, more democratic, and every member has the right to stand and speak his house in the one single assembly.
Okay, thank you. I think on this one, Gregory, you're still going first, aren't you?
No, or am I going first?
Then
I think I should be first.
Andy to go first this time?
Yeah,
sorry, apologies.
Hello. Thank you so much for your question, Richard. I am very concerned about the way the government has been acting in the last 4 years. It's not a personal thing, but I think it's the way, the structure of the recent permanent chief executive officer who changed the structure of our government, and I don't think it's working for the people of this island. I don't believe in the one gov, and it has not been, I think it has actually now been thrown out. I think that Deputy Young did bring a proposition, and the House eventually decided they would change one gov, and that would be one of the first things I would want to do if I get into government. Because I think in the last 4 years, the power has been concentrated in the hands of a very few number of ministers, and I think the rest of the State's Assembly have been disenfranchised. And I want that to change, and I want everyone to have a say, and I don't want people called backbenchers or scrutiny to be disregarded, because it's much better. We're going to vote for 49 people, so we should use the talents of those 49 people. And that would be, I think we need to change the one gov. I think we need to change something called the machinery of government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, Hilary. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I absolutely agree that I think it needs to be looked at. I do think that there has been a concentration of power into a few ministers and their civil servants, and that information and that decision-making has not come down to others in the States Assembly to be able to understand why those decisions have been made and they're not informed properly to be able to also agree on those decisions or properly make those decisions. So I absolutely think that there has to be a review. Not sure whether it will be as quick as a year, because it's really important to actually understand also from the general public what you think as well. I think the change of the voting system wasn't taken to the general public, and I think that also should have been as well. So any form of change of government or reflection on that needs to go back to the general public before any decisions to be made. There needs to be better accountability for ministers. I think they should have indicators where performance indicators where they tell us exactly what they've done within the year and how they're going to go forward for the next year. I think that's really important, being part of their mandate to go forward is accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
I'll pick up on the last point first. We do. Every 6 months there's a report, there's a half-yearly report, and then an annual report has got key performance indicators in there. In fact, for the first time ever, you can look up various of these things online, and there's a thread that goes from everything we promised to do and how it's being done. It did get stalled under COVID. It's not perfect, it needs improvement, but it's there, and it's the first time ever. In terms of, we do have a single assembly. I did not support the loss of senators. Frankly, I will use the word travesty, because I think that was probably the most democratic position you had. But I think there is a fundamental understanding between the complexities of what we deal with now. Ultimately, to serve islanders, you have an organisation of 7,000 people, and in the past, the chief executive was not able to tell the people immediately under him what to do. So there was a fundamental disconnect between council ministers, the assembly council ministers going down. That was what was put in place. But obviously change is unpopular. But your fundamentals there, if you want to go back to the committee system, fine, but there was never any will to do so, and that was before the ministerial system was approved, I think probably several months before I first came into the assembly. And I'm looking at Deirdre at the same time as well.
Thank you, John. Elaine?
Well, it's clear there's quite a number of people that I have spoken to on the doorstep have challenged ministerial government. They don't like it, they don't think it works. They do also agree that there's a concentration of power in too few hands. My question on that is whether it's the system that's wrong or the way it's now implemented. And do we need ministers who are more communicative, who are more collaborative, and who share more information? OneGov does seem to mean to me that ministers to a degree have lost their powers, that the civil servants are going through their own civil service organisation through the chief executive, and it's not apparent to me that the lines of communication are necessarily clear, nor that civil servants are listening to the ministers. It should be the politicians that set the strategy for this island, and the civil service should be doing as they're told to implement the decisions of government and ministry and the ministers. I think we do need we do need more communication, we need more transparency, we need more listening, and I think we also have to remember, and I can't remember which report generated the ministerial system of government. There have been so many, even in my time in Jersey, we seem to have regular reports where the states looks at its own structures and makes changes. But the Clothier report, I think it was Clothier, is that right, was probably a very well considered report, and we have made efforts to, as I believe, we've introduced parts of it, but not all. I also don't agree with the removal of senators. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Kirsten?
Thank you. Quite simply, ministerial government has put the civil service in charge of this island. That's one of the big problems with ministerial government, and it's best expressed and explained by a minister who spoke to me in October 2018, about 3 or 4 months after I was first elected. And they came up to me and they said, Kirsten, I'm sat there with 7 civil servants. In the committee system, I would have been there as chair of the committee, and I'd have had 5 people around me, 5 other states members helping me make that decision. Now it's just me and seven civil servants against me. So I don't stand a chance. She said, Kirsten, I need you and others would like you in there with me. And that's why in an assembly of just 48 people, that's why ministerial government does not work in the form that we have now. As well as has been shown, I think, in COVID, you had 21 people during the biggest crisis this island has seen since the war. You had 21 people involved in ministerial government. You had 28 people who were states members, had been elected by their parishes, by the island, and those 28 people were just sat on the sidelines because the ministers wouldn't allow them in. The ministers wouldn't engage them or involve them, and that's a massive problem. And so, yes, I completely agree with you. This system does not work. This system disenfranchises people, and this system means that when you elect a states member, you're unable to know whether that states member will actually be able to be involved. And we only have 48 people. We're not the Parliament in the UK with 600 state MPs. We just got 48, and we need to use them all.
Thanks, Kirsten. Hugh?
Well, I totally agree with what Kirsten has said, purely because of the basis that I think that I had a long look through, and especially the legal report of the Guernsey elections, when everybody had a vote and they were working to committee situations. There has been problems there. The only thing I would bring up here, we are only 100,000 population. We talk about 49 people. I think that there is the ability within the island to have less numbers, but what I don't want to lose is the parish community feel, and that's why we're here tonight as well, because we've got to look after that as well as the constables, because it's there, it works, why do we have to change it? So going on from that, on the voting structure, I think there should be less number of people in the House. I think there needs to be a complete look over and a complete drafting of all the things we've looked at in the past and decide which way we're going to go forward, because it does need to be changed. There's no question of it. I've had the same experiences. You're only told what you wanted to know as opposed to what you should know. And I think that we come out with those statements on a lot of occasions with some of the civil servants, and I just don't think it's right. I think we're the elected member. We should be the ones that should be getting the decisions, what we make for us to live in this island.
Thank you, Hugh. And Mary?
Well, I have had a distinct feeling numerous times that the ministers actually don't know what they're doing at all. And I think that you have confirmed that in that it's the civil servants that are driving the situation. You have to read massive reports, which you haven't got time to read, put out by civil servants who really couldn't care less anyway. They want lots of statistics and lots of numbers. So I do have a certain sort of sympathy for the ministers, although I'm standing here to be elected to get rid of the ministers who are here on this table. But I do feel that you probably have a pretty tough time with the enormous number of civil servants that there are in the island. This is also creating a top-heavy bureaucracy. I think that we all feel that we have to fill in too many forms, do too many things with too many people who we can't see. And I think that somehow personalities, people have to be brought back into the system. I think this is very important. One thing that does worry me is that the parties may now begin to make this situation even worse. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mary. And back to Gregory, who hasn't had the chance to answer this question yet.
Yes, 1 minute is going to be very short for this. First thing is the concentration of power. I love that. My God, are you in for a surprise? Because being a minister doesn't give you much power. If you're very, very lucky and a very good leader, you can nudge the machine a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, and slowly take it where you want. But you have to be a very good person, and it is up to you to choose them. The machinery of government, I do tend to agree. We're a very small island, and we have a hybrid system, which is sort of ministerial, but then the government is a minority by design. So everything goes back to the assembly, and that's also something you need to understand. everything is voted by the Assembly. Any order that I would give as a minister could go back to the Assembly and they could decide on it and say, well, yes, you've freed that person or put that person in jail, deported this one, and we disagree, and we're not having it. So the Assembly does have the final power for absolutely everything. And that's something that we can work on. And finally, the electoral system, you wouldn't know how much I fought not to have this, not to get rid of the parishes, not to get rid of the senators, and not to diminish the power of the constables so that they're getting rid of the next time. I really fought tooth and nail against this.
Thank you, Gregory. Who do we have next, Lisa? What's your... Could you give your name and parish, please?
Hi, I want to know what the politicians...
Excuse me, your name and parish,
Hello,
please.
my name is Chantilly McCarthy. I'm from St Lawrence.
Thank you.
I would like to know what the politicians basically are doing to address climate crisis, because the net temperature is projected to rise in my lifetime by worst case scenario as a person who has a physical geography degree who has read the IPCC reports by 5 degrees if you do nothing, and best case scenario 1 degree, which will have a detrimental impact upon us as a coastal nation, because with the sea level rising and the cost of the sea defense, which has made me lose all faith in politicians. At the moment, we have some very small measures which are a subject of personal choice rather than the majority of people which will undertake this, such as recycling. This is not enough. Having visited the Netherlands and other countries which are richer than Jersey, such as the Kingdom of Denmark, they have recycling on each street. They also have bicycles and sustainable subsidised transport for those on lower incomes, particularly in Netherlands and Denmark, where they put the climate first, they put young people first. As I cycle and commute to work, actually it feels very dangerous. There's been many cycling accidents. There's not actually cycle paths, and I'm in the minority. And the lifestyle here tends to be focused towards the Americanized lifestyle with very high carbon intensive things. So actually, I'd like to remind you that there's some people in my generation who are choosing not to have children because of this climate emergency, though yet nobody does anything, nobody cares, and that is why I lost all faith in politicians. Thank you. So I want to know what you're doing to address this.
Thank you. Well, I think that's a very clear question, and could we start this time with you, Hilary?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your question. I absolutely endorse that there is absolutely a climate crisis and that we have to take our part in Jersey for that. There is the carbon neutral strategy and roadmap that has just been passed recently, where there is definitely some things that we can implement in the next few years as Jersey to make ourselves go towards carbon neutrality. But at the moment, there is only 10% of funding to go to that roadmap. And that is the problem. There's not enough funding to be able to implement everything that they want to do on this, or we want to do on this roadmap. So I think that's really important when if I'm voted in, that we really look at increasing the amount of funding going towards that. And that also includes transport and looking at alternative transport. I cycled here tonight. I think it's really important that we make roads roads safety and inclusive for all. And I really think that it's important that we all, as many of us as possible, try to embrace cycling to as many places as possible. And finally, I think it's not just individual, it's also governments and businesses that need to also look at environmental, and we have the finance industry really needs to step up around sustainable finance, so really looking at ESG, and that there's not enough greenwashing in Jersey. So I think we really need to make sure that the finance coming through Jersey is as sustainable as possible, because that really has an impact globally as well, and not just locally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Hilary's correctly identified. We've had the Climate Emergency Fund, which I was instrumental in putting the first sums of money in from discussions to make sure it went in the government plan to ensure that there was funding to start work. The carbon neutral roadmap map has just been approved. There will be funding measures that will need to come in. You do have to be very careful, by the way, in terms of the source of the funds and the impact on our community as a whole, particularly when we're just coming out of a pandemic. So there will be a balance, but measures will come in. I agree entirely in terms of our dependence on petrol engines, etc., and over time shifting across to things like cycling. We will be having the hopper bus starting in about the next couple of weeks. That's all part of improving our sustainable transport. That's again an initiative that came out from me. In fact, my budget's funding it at the moment. In terms of the global side of things, we do actually, as an island, have a fantastic financial services industry. If we do the right mechanism in place, particularly working through people like the British or Irish Council that we work represented on, with London, with Dublin, etc., there is mechanisms there which we can all work together through financial services to have a far bigger impact globally on the carbon impact of measures compared to on this small island.
Thanks, John. Elaine?
I absolutely agree with you that we need to do more. I think Jersey is in a fortunate position in comparison to some other island nations because we are not actually facing total obliteration by rising tides. Some islands are. Some people will lose their livelihoods, their homes, everything. And we will be looking at displacement. I think we need to look at technology, to use technology as well as we can. And I take your point about cycling. Jersey, one of our issues in Jersey is that we are an island which is in love with the car. We don't have acceptable transport. There's 2 or 3 buses a day I can get from my house into town and nowhere else. If we're going to expand cycle networks and better forms of sustainable transport, we need to make some very bold decisions which will not be popular. For example, in each of these parishes, Trinity, St John and St Lawrence, I think we all have a main arterial route which is very busy. We may need to look at things like shutting one lane. We could do things like shut one lane on a rota basis so that cars only come in one way and go out another, but that just moves the problem around. But it would let us free lanes for bicycles. We need to start being creative about things like that. The other thing I would say, cost of living, I do my very best to buy environmental friendly options, but they are expensive. And I'm lucky I can do that, but some people, if you're choosing between a meal for your family and £8 for a cleaning product because it's environmentally friendly, some people cannot do that, and we need to support everybody to be more environmentally friendly.
Thank you, Elaine. Kirsten?
Thank you. And I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it. The world is facing an environmental possible disaster, and it doesn't know what it's doing. Jersey has brought in the carbon neutral roadmap, and I'm really pleased to have served with Deputy Guida and others in bringing that forward and bringing that up. I've also spotted one of the problems that Jersey has. We could become the most environmentally friendly place on earth. In many ways, I'd love that to happen, but it wouldn't change anything if America, India, China, Europe continue to pollute and pollute and pollute. So we have to make sure that we seize this as an opportunity and use the private sector particularly. We have businesses like EV, which have challenged the car culture that is so important. And so we need to make sure that rather than entirely expecting government to change everything, that we use Jersey's incredibly creative private sector and say, we need you to help lead us there, because we cannot afford to do it all by ourselves, especially when we see other nations and countries doing much less than us. And I want to encourage that green growth, that enterprising, entrepreneurial island thinking that we have here to make sure that we can push forward and become a much more environmentally friendly island. That's how we'll do it without bankrupting the island. And I just wanted to say that sense of income is really important, because I brought the amendment which made sure that when the government did its carbon neutral roadmap, it had to concentrate and make sure it was fair on people with low incomes, because this is costly and we need to make it work for all of us.
Thanks, Kirsten. Hugh?
Yes, it comes down to that money question again. I'm totally behind it, but when I then start looking at the 120,000 registered cars on the island, I start thinking, how on earth are we going to control it? Now, infrastructure has set out a way of trying to do it. We've had difficulties on the way through. And I think the other thing that's been more positive is that we've had companies, large companies, wanting now to get involved because they appreciate the situation that we all face ourselves in. But it is money, and that is, I suppose, one of the biggest problems. And I do feel that there could be more money put aside from the states with regards to this situation from some of the other investments they've got and some of the other things they're trying to do with the infrastructure department. And I think that we've all got to look at ways of ourselves saving and making sure that we pass it on. And the other thing is that I discovered the other day, just talking to colleagues of mine in the Honorary Police, I think there has to be a discussion not only with us as ratepayers, taxpayers or whatever, but also that the Honorary Police who give their time up free, and I think we can use them to make sure that we pull all of this together. Why are you driving your car? Why is there one person in the car? I know it sounds awful, but if you take our road that goes across the two parishes during the morning to school, it's one big car with one child in. That somehow is we've got to change, without any doubt at all.
Thank you, Hugh. Mary.
Thank you for asking that question. I went to my grandson's school in the UK last week to talk about the importance of voting. One of the subjects that came up was the environment, and there were 38-year-olds talking about the environment. And I thought that was one of the most positive things that I had heard, that they are really passionate about it. We of the older generation don't really know enough about it. We're not passionate about it. It's not going to happen in our time. I think that passion has got to come back into this climate change debate. We've left it drift. We're not talking enough about it. Now, I just want to take my own example. I have an electric car. Electric cars are not the answer. I won't go into it now because I've only got 1 minute. But why, I'm at St John's, why do I not get a bus to go into town when I want to go into town? There are 2 buses a day, very good. I can get into town in 20 minutes. Why do I go to town in an electric car? Because it only costs me 90p to park it. So I'm going to get in my car. It's very convenient. I can park it. It's there when I want to come home, when I want to come home. But somebody has got to stop me. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we have got to get out of our cars. Bicycles are probably not the answer because it's such a hilly island, but we must find a way around it. And public transport, to me, is the way, and circular routes, not routes that just go up and down to St Helier.
Gregory. Thank you, Mary.
Another very, very short minute for this. As you may know, I was extremely involved in getting the carbon neutral roadmap out. And there's a lot to say about this. I think the first thing is that we're actually starting in a good place. All of our energy is actually already decarbonized, and we have very, very little industry. So half of the problems that other countries have with carbon neutrality, we don't. But we still have to deal with heating, transport, and our purchases. I agree with almost everything that has been said at this table. But I'd like to add something that is quite important. First of all, it is a huge budget, but it's over quite a number of years. And if you divide it, it's about 1% of our purchasing power. About 1% of the money you make can change climate in the world. And the other thing that is quite important is that there are massive co-benefits. And everybody forgets that. We're changing the climate, and if the Americans and Chinese don't do it, we're lost anyway. Yes, but what about not having noise in Jersey? What about not having pollution in Jersey? In a few years' time, burning stuff to make energy will be vulgar. It will be considered idiotic. There are so many other better ways of doing it. So it's not that expensive. We can do it. And it's not just for the environment. There are so many other benefits to going that way.
Thank you, Gregory.
Hello, being the last one, I have to agree with what everybody else has said. I think we are in a period of transition at the moment, and I think it's going to be, I know probably, so is it Sean, was your name? Chantilly, we would like us to do it much quicker, wouldn't you? And my daughters want us to embrace it far quicker. My little grandson says we have to, it's really important. So I think we've got to learn probably from the youngsters, and I think we really need to embrace it. But it isn't cheap just to change. So we have to be mindful that we do need houses with better insulation. And it's great that the youngsters have got bus passes for £20 because that takes them, they can go around. And I'm very lucky because I've got an electric bike, and I know that not everyone can ride a bike, but for me, it's a great way of getting around, and I can just sling it round a lamppost when I get to town and then go back again, and that really helps me. So we just have to just keep going, little by little, I think, and then we'll get there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Lisa, who have you got for us now?
Yeah, sorry, good evening. Sorry, I was down at my time. Sorry, I came on a bike, but I came in a car. Can I just pick up a couple of things?
Sorry, could you just give your name and parish, please? Yes, please, if you can. No? No?
Hello?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm from this lovely parish. I wanted to pick up a couple of points. There were a couple of words, well, one word in particular, which was coming out time and time again, which was disconnect. If I add another word to that, apathy. One of the prevailing criticisms of the current system of government is it is completely disconnected from the people it represents. And that feeds into apathy. And you've only got to look around the room tonight and, look at the age group you've got here. My question is, how do we go about reconnecting with the people? How would you go about reconnecting with your electorate? And moreover, how do we deal with what is obviously an ongoing issue of voter apathy? You've got to get younger voters engaging with you. How do we deal with that? How are you going to take that forward?
Thank you. And this time we will start, I think, with... was it you last time, Gregory? No, it's you, John, isn't it? Yes, please.
I don't have a panacea. What I can tell you is from experience what we've seen through COVID. So prior to COVID, if we were going around for a government plan consultation or something, we'd come around to a meeting like this. And I think from experience, we had about 30 to 50 people turned up, of which 20 or 30 had been from the previous meeting. During COVID, when we went online, and that's not the answer for everyone, on the government plan week, we had 10,000 people came in to the consultations and feedback. We've tried it with the Ask the Ministers. I don't know if anybody's dialed into those. And it depends on your views. It's one of those things that's going to evolve. But I think the last one we had 1,500 accounts sitting in during that time. So I think there's something around that technology side that we've got to build on, but you've also got to take account those who aren't digitally enabled and how do you deal with that. The apathy side, I honestly don't have an answer on that one. It is incredibly important to get out and vote. We know that because otherwise, essentially, if you don't vote, you don't really have a voice. And we keep putting that message across, and all we can do is keep doing it. I'm not convinced we'll see how the system works as whether it improves things or not.
Thank you, John. Elaine, thank you.
I think you're right on both points. I think there is a disconnect. I think we need to address that by politicians being more open, having more surgeries, being more accessible to the people. I think ministers have become very remote from the electorate. I'm told that the media, even the media, struggle to get to see to see a minister and only meet communications people from the civil service. Everybody needs to be more open and more available to the population. Somehow or other, we need better communication. And I think just communication that engages people, that isn't dull and boring and is just accessible. Government doesn't always communicate in a way that's just understandable. And I know there's a lot of spend on communication. Is it too much? I don't know. Is it effective? Who knows? I think we need to work on that. Apathy, again, there's a difference here because while people don't seem to be keen to come out to vote, as an island, people are enormously engaged in the voluntary sector. Lots of people give their time in the island to do things at youth clubs, sports clubs. There's a lot of volunteering. So people do care, but how we turn that into voting, do we want to go down the Australian model and make it compulsory? Possibly not. That would be very unusual for a British island. But I think it's just encouragement, it's education. We hear a lot about human rights, and I think people need to understand with a human right comes obligation, and some form of participation in the civic democratic process is part of your civic contract as a citizen. And I think we need to persuade people that they have a part to play in our democracy, and they should come out and play that part.
Thank you, Elaine. Kirsten?
Thank you. It's a brilliant question. How does a 47-year-old man engage with young people? It's a really, really good question. One thing I would say is speak to people. That's what I've done for the last 4 years. And one of the biggest disappointments I've had as a States member is to see other States members who just don't do the same thing. Whether it's in the Royal Square, you'll know plenty of people know me. I'm there and I'm talking to them. Around the parish here, I'm constantly talking to people. As far as young people are concerned, talk to them and then deliver something. There are parts of this manifesto which are entirely informed by my conversations with young people. Issues such as mental health, issues such as being able to travel into town. These are conversations that I've had with young people that I've been able to go back to them and say, because of that conversation we had, I've now put that in my manifesto. This is what I want to do. So how about we talk to people and then we act on it and show them that we act on it? I think it's really not that difficult. I've spent the last year or so as an assistant minister, and there's no question government is disconnected. Part of that is because of the sheer level of work, which is why we can't get rid of States members, because then nothing would be scrutinised and none of us would have any clue what was going on in government. The sheer level of work does mean that ministers are often in meetings. I solved that by saying, right, let's have meetings with the people I'm working for. So as far as the agriculture industry is concerned, that's all my work there has been informed by constant meetings with the agriculture industry. Culture, arts and heritage, entirely built by working with stakeholders in that sector and saying, come and talk to me, hundreds of them. So that's how you do it and that's how you make it relevant. Ultimately, it's not difficult. Talk to people.
Thank you, Kirsten. Hugh.
Continuing following Kirsten a minute, but Kirsten's one side of the administration, I'm the other side. Sorry. Thank you. I've seen a lot of change in the youth of today. As you probably know, I deal a lot with most of the sporting bodies in the island. There was a tendency in the past to go back to their associations. I've spent time talking to them. The apathy is not there. It's actually what we've got to convince them that they can achieve a lot by voting. And I think that is what has to come out of it. I mean, if you take sport alone at the present time, we're now seeing that all these reports coming out that it contributes to our mental health as well as physical well-being. And it's available to all. And there is a big increase in the number of youngsters doing a lot more things. And it is those people that we've got to catch them young, unfortunately, because once it seems to me they get past a certain age, other things come into play. But it is important that clubs, associations, charities get involved with their youngsters, because I tell you what, that is your next voting people, and that's the people that's going to be running this island. So we need to get them on board, and it's vitally important to keep in with the clubs. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. And Mary.
Thank you for asking that question. It's one of my hobby horses. I just would like you all to see this. It's the card that my grandson did the moment that he heard that I was standing for election. I didn't even know that he knew what to vote meant. I thought, he's an 8-year-old. How did he know what to vote means? Anyway, I decided that I would like to try and go and talk to his class, as I said a minute ago. So I went on Monday, and it was an electrifying experience. There was no apathy there at all. They loved it. I thought that I would talk for 5 minutes. I thought it might be a bit sticky. I didn't quite know how they'd take it. But it was non-stop for half an hour, and the poor teacher was crossing off her lessons for the last half hour, and we went on and we went on, and finally I said, no, we really must stop. And we had a mock vote, and it was about whether they wanted more outings, whether they wanted more cake sales, or whether they wanted sticky toffee pudding put back on the menu. Anyway, they voted for more outings, obviously, but there was no apathy, not a second of apathy, and it was really the greatest experience, and that's what I'd like to get going here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. That was very interesting. And Gregory?
Yes, the first thing is accessibility. Now, our phone number is in the book, and this thing rings at 11:30 at night, when I'm already in bed, with somebody wanting to have an hour conversation with me about justice or police or any sort of problem that they have, and I take it and I make notes and then I deal with it the next day. So accessibility, this is Jersey. This is the one extraordinary quality that we have, is that all of your politicians are one phone call and sometimes, just 20 meters of walking away. We are very, very accessible. Some of us shy away from the media. It's possible. I've never sought it, but if they asked anything, I was always made available. I always made myself available. Same thing. If anybody wanted an official meeting with a minister, I would give them an official meeting. I'm very, very happy to talk to anybody. Accessible communication. I don't think we've cracked the code. I think that what we did this time was to tell everything. It was the most open government in the history of Jersey, but that meant a deluge of information, which was very, very difficult to sort through. And I don't think we've cracked that. We need to go midways between telling everything that happened, but also making it intelligible. And this we haven't cracked yet.
Thank you, Gregory.
Thank you so much for the question. I don't think this current government have been very good at communicating with us, the public. It's been like a secret government, and it's been very hard for us to actually get any information. So we've had to do lots of freedom of information requests, because that's been the only way. We've had a communications team of 34 people, but they haven't been giving the proper message. It would be great if the actual government could talk directly to us, I feel. But I do think there are possibilities. At the moment, we're having masses of hustings. We're very lucky. We've got hustings at the zoo, green ones. We've had hospitality. We've had the Jersey Electricity Company, the waterworks. But I think it's just the government don't seem to have actually... We're very lucky now because we're meeting all these people. But I think that for the last 4 years, they haven't actually met with the people on the ground and asked their questions. Say people like the health workers haven't had a voice. And I just think we need to do that in the future. It's something that I feel that the public have not had for the last 4 years. It's been I used to have to text Gary Burgess to ask a question when it was asked the ministers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Hilary.
Thank you for that question, and it's something that has been actually raised while I've been going around the districts and the different parishes. Many people who I've knocked on the door with have actually said they haven't seen their deputy in the last 4 years, and they wouldn't know in some cases who they were. So I think it's really important to have that much more connection and accessibility between those who are elected and the electorate, and to have those opportunities to be able to say, look, I'm here. I'm accessible, please come. In fact, I have drop-in sessions 3 times a week where people know where I am so they can come and speak to me now, and I want to carry that on through when if I get elected, that we have really set times where you can actually come and speak to me about anything. And honesty, I think that's really important. We need to be honest with why we're making the decisions we're making. Yes, there's a deluge of information, and actually that's overload of information, which means you can't work out why the decisions were made. and what were the reasons, and then distill that all. And so I think people need to be more honest in how those decisions, will get to those decisions. I've been here 3.5 years, and consultation after consultation after consultation. It means we're deluged in communication. And apathy, I think it's also, you need to have diversity in the States Assembly, because I think that will engage more people to come to vote if they see more people like themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do you have for us now, Lisa?
And Binny from St Lawrence. Is that working?
Yes, that's good.
I would like to ask you all what your ideas are about protecting both the farmers, particularly the smaller farmers on this island, and producers, and also our incredibly valuable green spaces, our farmland. I know there's terrific pressure to build, but to think that you might lose 10 fields for building in the next 3 years, and if that continued, we'd be losing an awful lot of green space, is very worrying. So I'm concerned for the farmers and also the fisheries and the protection of the seas around the island. I'd like your views on that, please.
Thank you, Anne. That's a good question. Elaine, please. Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. Thank you very much, and it's one that I care a great deal about. Farming clearly is a very traditional, occupation in Jersey. I think we must protect it, not just for its traditional historical significance, but for its economic benefit. Farmers produce, they contribute to our economy. But I think at the moment, most critically, we have a war in Ukraine. We're hearing every day that food is going to be compromised. This is not the time to lose any of our ability to produce our own food. Food security has to become much more important to us. I remember attending meetings around about the time of Brexit where we were being told that, yes, food security, medicine security, that was all finally battened down. We now do have the disruption of what's happening in Ukraine, so we must be able to produce our own food, and we must support our farmers to do that. I'm told that the price of a tonne of fertiliser has gone from something like £200 in the last year or two to as much as £1,000, although I think it's come back down to £800. Farmers are paying a lot of money for fertiliser. It costs a vast amount of money to irrigate a field, and we really have to support our farmers, whether that's by subsidy for fuel, subsidy for to keep them in business. There are issues around succession planning. We need to try and encourage young people into farming, because some of our older farmers are looking to retire and they don't necessarily have people to follow in and run the business behind them. So farming, fisheries, we do need to protect our fishermen. The French fishermen, I believe, have a subsidy on fuel costs that our fishermen don't have, I believe. So we need to make sure that our fishermen receive the same level of subsidies from government that enables them to compete on a level playing field. Farmers also look after our environment, going back to this lady's question earlier on. Jersey looks beautiful because the farmers look after the hedgerows in the fields, and they are essential to the ongoing success of this island.
Thank you, Elaine. Kirsten?
Thank you, Anne. Farming isn't just Farming isn't just economic. Farming isn't just traditional. Farming is the entire shape of the landscape of this island. This island looks the way it does because of farming. But farming has been left and hung out to dry for the last 20 years. That's the truth of farming in this island. We've been shouting Jersey cows and royal potatoes for 20 or 30 years, and yet the government has not backed it up. The government has actually slashed money to farming. In the 1990s, I think it was 1996, we spent £5 million a year on support for our farmers. Today, by 2018, that had fallen to £1 million a year. In real terms, 5 million in 1996 is worth 18 million now. Now, I and the government have doubled that from 1 million to 2 million. We need to double it again to 4 million. The next government plan, I've already instructed officers, though I won't necessarily, unless you re-elect me, be there to support it, to put that to £3 million, which will have been a tripling of the amount of money for farming, because it's vital we do that, because our farmers are fighting in the marketplace against Dutch, French, British, Spanish, Moroccan, Peruvian goods, all massively subsidised by their governments, and we've just done nothing and let it out. That's changing. I'm changing that, and it's essential, because otherwise this island will become a concrete island, because it's only by keeping the farmers in the fields farming that we keep this island the way it is at the moment. So no, farming needs support. We need to support it. I will not back down from that position. It is vital we support our farmers, or we lose this island.
Thank you, Kirsten. Hugh?
That you can't have farming. One of the bigger issues that I've been dealing with, as Kirsten knows, is the same with the dairy industry. If you look back 5-10 years, how many herds of cows we had, and now how many we've got at the present time, we've got to make sure that we keep the dairy industry going and the farming industry. The only thing that slightly worries me is in the past, a lot of the farming industry was let to third-party people offshore, which meant that the vast majority of farmers, well, they sort of gave up because they weren't getting anything. And I think that we've got to make sure that when I see father and son saying, well, I don't really want to do this, and I've got to say, having driven from Trinity through St John's and into St Lawrence, it was a delight coming across the middle of the island. There was no tall buildings. It was just green fields and nice houses. It was absolutely fantastic to drive across. And I think that with the farms that are across this island, we've got to make sure we keep them. And we've got, as Kirsten does say, we have got to put money into it. It has to be subsidised, and it has to be looked at very intensely. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Hugh. Mary?
I think that agriculture and the environment go hand in hand. Farming is going to be increasingly important as a way of absorbing carbon. This is already beginning in parts of Jersey, I believe, where there's the carbon funds. I think if we can look at it in this way, not just for the production of food, which is obviously very important, I think we'll suddenly realise how important farming is. But on the other side, we need also to be very careful about the extensive use of fertiliser, especially nitrate fertiliser, which is then ends up in our water courses and in the sea. So I think that agriculture is going to become increasingly important for the environment story. As I said, not just for the production of food. I think the production of food could probably be encouraged by a greater use of allotments. Some farming land could be turned over to the encouragement of farming vegetables in allotments. I think this would be very good on an island-wide basis. I think the land, yes, is incredibly important, should not be turned over to housing, and any field that is seen to be lying fallow with weeds growing over it, I think should be... They should ask, why has it got weeds growing over it? Is it because this is for the environment, or is it just because it's speculation?
Thank you, Mary. Back to you, Gregory.
Yes, on the first thing, farming and fishing are in trouble. A lot of that is due to their structure, and a lot of that is due to Brexit. It's been really, really difficult for them. I completely support the work of Deputy Morel in trying to help them and the increase in budget. I mean, out of all the countries in Europe, we are the ones who give the least to our fishermen and farmers, so this absolutely needs to change. In terms of green spaces, it was a real sacrifice to have to put in the island plan some green fields for building. And we recognized that from the start. We knew 3-4 years ago, we knew that we had a housing crisis, and we knew that we would need to make a sacrifice. And what we tried to do then was to protect the rest even better. So we gave up a few fields, but we made sure that the rest would be even more difficult to build upon. One of the things that the next government will have to do, and it's quite important, is to create a proper national park. We've had one which was only a national park in name, and it's been a real problem for the people who've tried to promote it. They work extremely, extremely hard, but it doesn't exist in law, and that is something that we will have to do at the next government. It's going to be difficult because it means management of land. It means we have to give management of land to other people. So that's going to be quite difficult, but it's one of the things that we will have to do at the next government, create a proper national park for Jersey.
Thank you, Gregory. Andy?
Yes, I think how important our farming is and how important our marine environment is. And I think we should definitely support it so that we can grow our food and we aren't, because I think perhaps if Ukraine carries on, we're going to perhaps need to grow our own vegetables. And Monty Don said you could grow things even in a little tub on your balcony. And he was very keen. You don't need a huge amount of space, but we could all help grow our own food, and it's really important. And I think there's something, Grow Jersey are really being very successful down in Zion, and they're helping lots of people, and it's good for their mental health. It's good for us all to reconnect with the soil, with growing. It's what we're sort of want to do, really. It's in our DNA, I think. And the marine environment, I think, is also very important. I'm not a keen proponent of dredging. I think that's devastating some of our seabeds. And I think that's something we have to be very careful. And we have to, I think the fisheries are really good at conserving various fish stocks and growing them on. So we do really need all of our food around our, it's a wonderful island. Thank you. We need to look after it and look after our farmers.
Thank you. Hilary?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I think it's absolutely essential that we are protecting our countryside, our marine life and our biodiversity from both improving our soil quality and make sure that our soil quality is as healthy as possible, also for the future, because you don't know what it's going to be for future generations as well. We have a problem of food security now, but we don't know what's coming in the future, and we need to protect our soil for future generations. We need to deliver marine protected areas. I think there should be a network of marine protected areas as well. But food security is a big issue. It's building, and it's going to be coming on us thick and fast, and then especially when harvest comes in November. And I think it will be important for the next government to create a cross-sectoral food security task force that can deal with the ramifications of this looming food and cost of living crisis. I think that's really key and something that the next government should take on. And there should be a food security strategy that's built where our farmers and our fishermen are the heart of that strategy, as well as the food supply chain in full. And also protecting green spaces is absolutely important, and that comes under this wider food security strategy. Thank you.
Thanks, Hilary. John?
Yes, sorry, I thought the thrust of the question was about protecting farmland and green space from development, so I may have missed part of the aim, but as well. Okay, so from the development side, I can't add anything more to what Gregory has said in terms of the pressures that are there. I think looking forward, if you're going to try and avoid that in the future, that is going to be about making that final decision as to whether you go up or you go out, ultimately. And if it goes up, it's got to be good design, brownfield sites, all that sort of stuff. Otherwise, you're going to still keep going out, and we're still going to have the issues that you're raising. In terms of helping farmers, what again Gregory and Kirsten suggested, nothing to add there particularly. It is all about, for me, about succession planning, giving farmers hope that they have an economic viability. And looking at Derek there, because he'll remember my involvement both in getting the dairy up out of his farm and getting the genetics into the island that also helped the dairy industry. I think if you're looking at cost of living issues that we're going through now, I think that support that we're going to have to do for a lot of people will have to extend for example, costs of increase in feed and all the rest that we've heard about.
Okay, thank you, John. Well, we're getting towards the end of the evening. We've got another 20 minutes or so. Are there any more questions?
I'd just like to ask each member, on behalf of myself and a lot of my elderly friends, if you're voted back in the States or voted in for the first time and the thing of assisted dying comes up, I'd like to know, are you for or against it? As I find it extremely worrying.
Thank you. Could I just ask for your name and parish, please?
Mary Ailes.
Thank you. St Lawrence, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Right, so we will need to start, I think. Just a for or against. It should be quite a quick one then, shouldn't it? I think it's down to Kirsten to go first.
Mary, I'm not going to give you a for or against. Because, okay, yes, in principle, I'm for it. And when we had the debate, and that's based on my own personal feelings, that I feel I should be able to end my life if I feel it is appropriate. I will give you a longer answer, I'm sorry, Mary. But as we went into the debate in the States, I was really racked with concern that the processes involved in enabling people to access assisted dying could be fallible and have problems and errors and mistakes. Because, let's face it, when the government gets involved in processes, there are usually errors and mistakes in those processes. Whether it's people who are being coerced by family members just to speed things up a little bit because there's a big inheritance lying behind them, or whether it's just doctors and nurses making mistakes. Those are real issues that really worried me, because what you have to remember is that the States has decided to have assisted dying. I was so worried about these problems that I brought an amendment to the States which said, because I realised the States was going to pass this regardless, there was a general feeling in the island that assisted dying is something that should be offered. And I brought an amendment to the States that said we can't just go down from this debate to bringing in a law and saying that's done. I brought an amendment which said we have to bring this back to the States for a third time at least, where the government has to show us all of the processes, all of the enabling behind that, so that we can be sure that we have got the safest possible way forward. I am still, I see you shaking your head, you're absolutely right, I'm still really uncertain about this for the very many reasons. It won't be me, the States will bring it in. There's a vast majority of people in the States who want to bring it in. So what I try to do.
A lot of elderly people who are not on the internet, and don't have a voice in society now. It's very difficult to give your opinion if you're not on the internet.
I agree, and it was those opinions that I was trying to put forward when I brought this amendment, to say we can't just rush the normal process that the government does, because I understood there were many people who were really worried about this, and I am, because my personal principle that I might want to be in control of my destiny when that time comes is not necessarily something which can be rolled out across a society-wide scale, and there are many people who don't want to access it. So I've done all that I could at the time, knowing that it was going to pass, that all I did was try to bring in something which gave us extra protections, that we don't create bad law and bad processes, because that really, really worries me. Thank you.
Hugh. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to respond initially. I have a 94-year-old mother who is still active and very much on board. And we have the debates at home, because I get to the stage where I think it should have come in, and then I get to the stages, if you still 94 and still going to the WI and the 2-in-1, hang on a minute. And the other thing that came out of most of the conversations is exactly what Kirsten said, and that is, are we doing it correctly enough? Once you start getting lawyers involved, once you start getting other people involved, you then get into a complete mirage of how you deal with it. As I said, I find it very difficult if I'm really non-compos mentis, I don't know anybody, I don't know my grandchildren, I don't know, and you are lying in a bed being looked after all the time. I mean, you're alive, I know, but on the other hand, do you really want that for a life and to have that for another 12, 24 years, 12, 24 months? And having spoken to my grandmother and having people around the house, it is quite amazing how they veer from one side to the other. So I really won't answer your question direct, but I do think that there is an occasion if providing everything is correct, and I have to say that it has to be correct.
Okay, thank you, Hugh.
I would say that I wouldn't like to have to sign now on the dotted line that I would be in favour, me personally would be in favour of assisted dying. If I were in a situation of acute pain, I'm not talking about dementia because I think that's totally different, but in acute pain, then I think I would like to have the option to end the pain. But people tell me now that pain control is amazingly good. Therefore, and it will get better, obviously. And I would only think of it in situations of extreme pain, not of dementia. I think people with dementia can give an awful lot in life. My mother had dementia, and the last 5 years, 6 years of her life were very difficult, but my goodness, did she give a lot. So no in the case of dementia, yes in the case of extreme pain.
They don't have it.
Well, there you are, then it's no.
Thank you. Thank you. Gregory, what are your views?
Am I going to be the only one to give this a straight answer?
Possibly.
I am for assisted dying, and just like Mary, it's because I have experienced extreme pain. And if you are in that situation, there is nothing that we will not do to get rid of it. And yes, people tell us that there are ways to manage it, but I've had testimonies from people with terminal cancer explaining to me exactly what pain management was, and it is not something I would like to go through. So I brought that proposition to the government. I accepted Deputy's moral amendment because, yes, it has to be done with the most stringent and strong safeguards. So I completely agree. They should go through the Assembly a number of times so that we're absolutely certain that it is done properly. If that happens to me, somebody I love, I want them to have the choice to end it.
Thanks, Gregory. Andy?
I'm struggling with assisted dying. I would find it, I think we've got very good palliative care now, and I think that is, I think it's a very, very difficult question, but I think we have to respect people's lives, and I think I wouldn't be able to give, and it would be very hard to expect a doctor to actually inject something into a purse to kill somebody. And I think I would vote against assisted dying.
Hillary.
Thank you. I'm struggling with finding in myself how I would answer this question, partly because I think it needs something that you really need to study and research to really understand what it is that pros and cons and kind of what Kirsten was saying about the processes and how strong the processes need to be. And that is something that I haven't done yet, and I would like to go away and look at that, because I hear you that is a really important issue to think about. So I wouldn't want to say to you now, I'm one way or the other, because I haven't done that research to be able to truly say. But in principle, for my own decision and what I would want, I think that we should be able to have that choice. But I understand it's not about me. It is about society and how we want to offer these services in society or not. And so again, I would come back to say that I am not able to answer you now because I would really want to take time to weigh up such an important question that can't be answered straight away like this.
John?
Yes, I'm going to say it's probably the most emotive, difficult and respectful debate that we've ever had in the Assembly, and that's in 16 years. It was a really, even the bailiff commented on the time. And I'm a bit like Hugh, actually. I had a number of conversations with older relatives to see what their views were, and they were mixed. But I think on balance, the majority came down in favour. For me, it's making sure that everyone feels valued. The biggest concern, I went with Kirsten, the amendment was accepted, is that there are full and proper safeguards, absolutely. But I think it's also like to be the case that unless you're in the position facing this issue, it's a very difficult one to pass judgment on. So at present, provided I'm satisfied that the safeguards are appropriate, then it is likely I would be in favour. But I said at present, and the safeguards have got to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Elaine?
Again, in principle, I am in favour of that. That's generated in part from my mother-in-law, who spent a number of years not being allowed to die and wanting to die. She was a GP and she supported it. Assisted dying works in other countries, but the key thing is it is a matter of personal choice. It's not a matter of the family making a decision. It has to be the person's choice. I would expect there to be a diagnosis of a terminal illness and an illness that was going to cause excessive pain. And I know you've said that there is very good pain relief, but if the pain relief means being semi-conscious on morphine for 24 hours of the day, I'm not sure that I would want to make that choice. There's pain relief, and it does come down to choice. And if someone wants to die, and it's clearly their choice, and we have medical opinions, and I know it works in countries such as Holland. I know someone who's had an experience of assisted dying in Holland. And although it was a difficult experience for the family, it was a person's decision, and the family supported it, and the person did not spend a long time in pain. Safeguards are everything. We must be clear about the safeguards. We need medical opinions. We can't have the family making the decision. But in principle, yes, I do support it.
Well, Mary, did you get an answer to your question?
Well, I wasn't Sorry. I was a nurse, and I nursed the elderly in Jersey for about 15 to 20 years. And most people, when they die relaxed and happy. They are never left in a distressed state. And I just think it's totally unnecessary, because it leads to killing other people. And believe me, there's so many people in Jersey that do not have relatives. They don't have people caring for them. Who's going to speak for them? I find it very, very worrying.
Well, as I said earlier, time is drawing on, but we've got time for one more question, I think.
Hello, my name is Christine Buckland, and I'm a parishioner of St Lawrence. We haven't heard anything about education this evening. What I would like to ask is what our candidates are going to offer our teachers in the way of increased support in these very, very difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Yes, Hugh. Thank you.
Quite clear where we start. My wife left the teaching profession in Jersey, 5 years ago. And when I hear from teachers now, which again, you hear from people coming around to the house and that sort of thing, there are another group of people that have been, what I feel, left behind. And for some unknown reason, I can't quite get to the bottom of it. It seems to me that they are so important. I know COVID has caused a problem, and I accept that. But on the other hand, we need our teachers. We're back to what we're saying earlier on. There's two professions which are essential to this island, teachers and doctors. And we've got to make sure that we look after them. And I think there's been a lack of understanding with regards to the teaching profession, especially with regards to the children. The effect it's having on children is well at the present time, which is frightening. I've got a 9-year-old granddaughter that starts talking about, why is half the class not there and all this sort of thing. And the teachers are trying to help it across. I just think that we've got to spend more time and understand the problems they have. And what do we go back to? It's again talking to them, understanding their feelings and understanding what their problems are. Because I don't think they're being listened to. And I think that we really do have to make sure that we look after them. They are such an important part to this island.
Mary.
I think teachers should be paid amongst the top salaries that they're... amongst the top salaries possible, more than bankers. I think they're absolutely invaluable. Without teachers, we don't have a future generation. I think that teachers are having a tough time because parents are now very demanding. It is not as valued in the social sense as it used to be. I think it should be right up there, right at the top, with doctors and nurses. And I would support you in every single way possible. I think you're absolutely invaluable. There is no price I would put on teachers.
Thank you, Mary. Gregory?
Right, my turn. Yes, I'm sure that when Deputy Raymond said teachers and doctors, he meant teachers and all of the health profession, including nurses. I completely agree. They are a key part of the island and frankly, a key part of the things that the government must provide. If you think about it, the reason why you have a government at all is security first, then health, and then teaching. And those are the three parts that we absolutely need to provide. Yes, we must look at salaries and make sure that they are fair, but I think the problem that our teachers have mostly now are the bureaucracy that surrounds the profession of teaching and the fact that you have to spend so much time filling paperwork instead of teaching. And the other one is the mental health aspect, the fact that we rely a little bit too much on teachers to take care of the mental health problems of the students, and we need to be able to take that away from them so that they, again, have more time for teaching. And these are things that we started in this government and that the next government will have to continue doing.
Thank you, Gregory. Andy?
Yes, I agree with exactly what Gregory said. And I think we really should value our teachers very greatly because I think all you can give your children really is love and education, and then they're set up for life. But I think they are being bogged down with loads and loads of bureaucracy and filling in boxes. And you can't. The child has to be, you have lots of different categories. I mean, when we were at school, we just said fair or good, and now they're working towards this level. I think it's got vastly too complicated, and I think we need to really listen to you and support what you teach us very much.
Thank you. And Hilary?
Thank you for that question. I think as a mum of 2 children in primary school with a long education, hopefully ahead of us, teachers are absolutely essential for Jersey. And I think at the moment we are looking at a mental health crisis within the youngsters. And I was talking to those that are involved in trying to support youngsters. And a lot of the time it's pinpointed down to excessive testing. And I think this excessive testing and focus on that is not only detrimental for our youngsters, but also for teachers, because that also brings in the bureaucracy, but also it means that they are not flexible and not able to bring fun and creativity and other aspects into the classroom. And I want to be able to see in the classroom problem solving, critical thinking, empathy, those kind of key skills that we want to build in our youngsters to be part of our society. And we need to support teachers to be able to give those, and to be able to teach our children that, rather than just very excessive exams all the time. I think also part of the problem is class size, and that very much impacts both the teachers and the students as well, and how they interact with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. John.
One of the problems we had when we first started was that people in different parts of the organisation doing roughly the same job were being paid different amounts for what they did. You can work that one out, but the differential worked out to be about 60 million quid. We've now pretty well solved that problem, but to go down to teaching specifically, so when you're talking about who do you value and all that type of thing, there's quite a complicated argument comes through on that. And frankly, I don't know in the past if people were being properly valued for what they did. For me, I'm not going to comment on pay particularly for various reasons, but for me, it's things like making sure you get clear career progression. I think generally in terms of conditions, I'm not sure where the position is now, things like what are the lunchtime arrangements, supervision. COVID, we've got lost learning, we've got mental health, we've got the impact, all sorts of impacts been coming through, digital, these things. Commissioned a study which we published about 2 weeks ago. Children are talking of addiction and inability to get back to their hobbies. So there's all those type of areas which are all pressures that are coming through which land on teachers. We have put quite significant funding into education, mental health and nursery education funding, but the results will take a while to work their way through.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Elaine?
Well, I think the bottom line is that teachers have the care of our children for a very considerable time, right through their developmental years. We do have to value children. Someone did ask me recently what I thought about the recent pay offer for teachers. I'm afraid I don't know that, but I think the sense of the email was that it's not clearly enough. Teachers are struggling to find accommodation like everybody else. Teachers aren't able to buy houses or even rent houses in the island. It's a very demanding job, I know that. I think for some reason there's in some quarters a great deal of resentment about teachers, where people think you start at 8:30, you finish at 3:30, and you have all these marvellous holidays. I've done a little bit of teaching, not in school, for adults, and I know it's incredibly hard work. Your prep, you're setting assignments, you're marking assignments, thinking about what you're going to do, doing lesson plans, health and safety, risk assessments, children's mental health, children with special needs. The burden on teaching, I think, has increased and increased and increased over the years. I think teachers have become devalued, which I think is a mistake, and I think we really need to value our teachers, support them, and particularly for Jersey, we need to be making sure that we're attracting good teachers, we're keeping good teachers, and that we're providing our children with the best education we can give them certainly in the state sector. I don't know if it's different in the private sector, if they have different terms, but certainly all of our teachers must be valued more than they are being at present.
Thanks, Elaine. And Kirsten, last to go.
Thank you. There are two reasons I'm sat here, really. One is my family, and second are my teachers and my education. I've been really lucky. I had a family who massively valued education. My mum and dad wanted nothing more than for me and my sister to get the best possible education they could, and that was their entire focus throughout our childhoods. Thankfully, Jersey at the time gave me an excellent education, and I've been able to use that, and now I'm hopefully trying to put stuff back into the island. The trouble is, somewhere between the 1990s and now, that investment in education started to dwindle. Now, I understand that this government has increased that, and that's quite right. But the reality is we need to continue to increase that, because we don't, again, we don't have an island if we don't have farming. We don't have a future if we don't have education and children who are able to be educated and enjoy that, enjoy being educated. Whether it's creativity, trying to bring back that enterprise culture into Jersey, whether it's helping, John mentioned substance abuse, helping children after COVID who have been isolated for months and months and months. It's just shocking. And actually, the answer's right there. In Iceland, they started to give, back in the 1990s, to stop substance abuse, they started to give their children free access to sports clubs. That's what we need to do here, not just sports clubs, but artistic and cultural activities as well. That gives the children something else to do. So we can support teachers in many ways, as well as paying them and investing in them themselves. We also support teachers by making their work easier, by making sure that our children, our young people, have a lot more to do than just sit on iPads and watch and do that all day long. So for me, education is everything over here.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Actually, I'd like to say also that all of you have failed to actually address the issue I'm most concerned, which is the mental health and the kind of life that they lead in the classroom. We have reported inadequate facilities. Special. And we have many suffering from mental illness, which they take into school every day with them, high levels of anxiety. And I'm a retired teacher. I have 2 university degrees, and my salary is very low in comparison to what I would have in the public sector, where all my skills could be put to use. I think the island fails to understand that problem in our school for our teachers. We're very aware. I think we all currently are going to be members of the states of Jersey to consider what I was a secretary. So we secondary team, young adults, teenagers, underpaid, threatened violence. I have also been affected. And we are not supported by parents, children, difficult, dangerous, violent, pushing drugs, making life very difficult. I really do think change takes many.
Right, well, thank you very much. That's very interesting, and I'm sure all the states members or potential states members here will listen to what you've said so well. Thank you. So that, I think, brings us to the end of this version of the Hustings. I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming here this evening and answering the questions to the best of their ability. I'd like to thank Deirdre Mesburian, our constable, for allowing us the use of the hall this evening, and to Lisa, the parish secretary, for making all the arrangements, and to our tech team at the back for the microphone systems, which have worked pretty well, I think, throughout. So, and thank you all for coming.